Welcome to Professionals and Coffee, a volunteer collective that boasts the professional profiles of public relations practitioners through virtual coffee chats. My name is Carolina Salinas, founder and project manager of Professionals and Coffee. And today I'm so excited to have Kallee Lins, publisher at Dantès Media Group. And as our interviewer of Professionals and Coffee, we have Aguilera, an international student from the PR postgraduate program from Seneca College. Welcome both of you to Professionals and Coffee, and I will now turn over the microphone. It is all yours, Aguilera.
Thank you, Carolina. So to begin with, I will introduce our talented guest for today's Professional and Coffee chat, Kallee Lins. Our talented guest hails from Castlegar, British Columbia, and moved to Toronto in 2012 to meld her love of the performing arts, research and writing. Outside of her work at the Dance Current, Kallee sits on the board of directors for the Dance Umbrella of Ontario and Dusk Dances, and also volunteers for the Policy and Research Network Mass Culture. Kallee is a communications specialist and currently leads development across revenue generation, business operations, governance, circulation management, and marketing for the Dance Current, Canada's premium source of dance journalism. Kallee is an alumnus of McGill University with a bachelor's in political science and theatre. She also holds a master's degree in theatre and performance studies from York University. Thank you for joining us today's coffee chat, Kallee. So to begin with,
this will be fun. I'm excited.
So to begin with, I would like to start by asking, what inspired you to unite performing arts, research, writing, and communications?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think it goes back to growing up as a dancer. I did a whole lot of dance styles from, I think starting in second grade all the way up through graduation. But I was also very passionate about journalism as well. So I worked at a student publication at McGill, wrote for them a little bit. I interned at the CBC upon graduation. But what I kept coming back to as just being the most enjoyable was writing about the arts. And when I started dabbling in research with theater and performance studies at McGill University, it was just so exciting to really dive into not just what performance was, but also how it acts in the world and to apply a really rigorous academic framework to that artistic practice was really fun. So I've sort of been in I've had different emphases, different emphases, is that the plural of emphasis? different emphases on different parts of that, the performance and the research and the writing at different parts of my career. But I hover around them a lot, which has been a lot of fun.
I assume that the world of performance is very difficult from that of publishing and advertising. So how did you adjust to this change and communicate the value of culture and art to your clients?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So just to clarify for listeners, as a magazine, we have subscribers, we have advertisers, we have people who write for us, we have the broader dance community that we speak to in creating our work. So it's a lot of different stakeholders. So in a lot of ways, I've been talking about dance to the same group, whether working for dance organizations or a media organization. I think the biggest difference for me going from specifically arts organizations like the Dancer Transition Resource Center has been learning the magazine side of it. Things like how we get our magazine into chapters and independent bookstores through Magazines Canada, those kinds of very publishing specific things. It's been a really steep learning curve for me, but that's been really fun to try and learn a new language related to all of that.
The print journalism aspect of it.
Not so much the journalism, but the economics of publishing specifically. There's the creation of the journalism, and then there's getting the magazine into people's hands. And it was that part of it that was very new for me.
My next question is, what does your day-to-day routine look like professionally in the communications field?
So it's largely in the communications field more broadly in terms of my career, or in this job right now?
Professional job, right, that you're pursuing right now,
right
with
now.
your dance and with your, the extracurricular hobbies that you have? How does it look? And how do you manage everything?
I ask because this is probably the hardest job to describe. So again, a bit of context. I think a lot of people look at the Dance Current magazine, and I'll show you an example here. It's very shiny and is
that an Indian artist on there? That looks like an Indian artist.
Yeah. This is Menaka Thakur, who really recently passed away, but she was a legendary Bharatanatyam dancer.
Yes.
That's it, yes. And did a lot of collaboration and work in the contemporary scene and all sorts of other things. She recently passed away, but we had a tribute to her in the last issue. This is a big side chat. But anyway, a very nice, shiny, gorgeous publication that we produce. So I think a lot of people see that and think that we're a very big team, but we're really only 4 staff members. And then we have our writers and some voluntary committees outside of that. So what that means for me as the person who leads that team is that on a regular day, I could be doing anything from grant writing to reconciling financials and working with our bookkeepers to doing the actual circulation side of things and sending out magazines that people have ordered. I can be doing high-level planning one day in terms of our annual plan for programs and the kind of work that we do, or working on very specific project plans if we're working on an event or something like that, having meetings with the editorial team to see what's coming up in terms of the actual coverage and journalism side of things, working with our marketing and development manager in terms of structuring her outreach to advertisers and sponsors and those sorts of things. So it's a whole lot. Working with the board of directors, that's very specific to my work in the nonprofit field. So it's a lot of things. And then, of course, there's the actual more specific communications work that I get to do at times, which is always really lovely. Writing copy for, things like our annual report or fundraising campaigns or marketing campaigns, those sorts of things. So I very much come from communications in terms of the roles that I've held. But once you get to a certain point where you're overseeing everything, it's a whole lot of different stuff. And I think really my job comes down to prioritization and making sure that everyone else in the organization can prioritize what they need to effectively, and making sure that our resources, both human and financial, are used appropriately. That's sort of the crux of what I do in my new role as a publisher. I feel like my communications background supports all of that, even if sometimes there's very little writing going on in my desk.
And then, of course, your knowledge of dance helps you as well.
Yeah, specifically for a dance magazine, that's helpful to have insight into the topic that we cover.
My next question is, for anyone looking to venture into the same field as yours, what are some tips you would like to give to them? So somebody who comes from a dance background and is planning to get into communications like you, what are some tips you'd like to give to them?
Yeah, I think my specific career trajectory arose from just saying yes to a whole bunch of different activities that may not strictly fit under what a communications manager expects to do. I did a whole lot of event planning early in my career. Actually, that never went away. I still do a lot of event planning, a lot of project management. There's a whole lot of things. As the communications person for a small organization, you're working with everyone. You're working with the fundraising team. You're working with the executive director. You end up being the point person and that all other work eventually funnels to, because you're the one who puts that out to stakeholders, to audiences. So you get to know what goes on in every area of the organization. And sometimes you have to step in and contribute to an area that maybe you've never worked on before. Maybe you've never been involved in a fundraising campaign. But I think my advice to anyone who's interested in this zany world that is arts and culture, and specifically not the nonprofit art sector, is to be open to doing a whole lot of different things and try them out, see what you like, and then you can work on specializing a little bit in some of those areas. I, for one, never thought that I would really enjoy management, and now that's basically what my job is about, structuring the work of the organization as a whole. That was a total surprise. I just started doing some of that, started doing some hiring in terms of bringing on interns and that kind of thing. You never know what you're really going to enjoy until you dip your toe in it.
So talking about, your job and everything, what are some of the most interesting projects that you've worked on and any key learnings that you would like to share?
I think what's most interesting in what we're doing right now is a new project that we started at the Dance Current called the Regional Reporter Program. And so that was an initiative that I have to give credit to our editor, Grace Wells-Smith, for really thinking of this, and we were waiting for an opportunity to launch it. We were grateful to receive a Canada Council grant to do this. We brought on 10 regional reporters, we call them. They're emerging writers and some more established, but arts writers from clear across the country. So basically split the entire country into 10 different regions, got someone on the ground in each area so that they could really look around, see what the news was in their local dance communities, go out and talk to them. And that really helped us ensure more equal representation across Canada in terms of our coverage. We say that we're a print and online publication that covers dance in Canada across the board, but we're a small team here in Toronto, and that's hard to do in practice. So this was something that really allowed us to have eyes and ears in every region of the country, from the Yukon to Newfoundland, and those articles are being posted online all the time, and being a little away from the editorial thing. Sometimes I don't even know what they're writing, and I just go to the website and there are these lovely, very personality-driven stories. Like there was a great piece about all of the outdoor dance performance that was happening in the prairies in the winter time. And you were talking about like -30, like it's very, very cold. And these dancers were going out and doing shows in the snow in the winter time. It's these kinds of really wonderful, rich, locally driven stories. And something that we learned from that is it took longer for us to launch it than we initially intended, because recruiting 10 different people and doing 10 different hiring processes all across the country just takes a long time. So I think anything that you're looking at doing on a national scale, just making sure that you're building in extra time for that, because it does take a while. And working with partners, it's applicable to that program, but I think any organization that I've worked in has done that really well. Sought out like-minded organizations in the local areas that we've worked in. And just wherever you can bring partners on board, whether that's for cross promotion or reaching out to their audiences, so long as there's a nice exchange of value, so many people are willing to work with your organization and support the work that you do. So give yourself extra time, way more time that you think you need, no matter what the project is. I think that's usually a pretty applicable thing, and look for partners. Can't hurt.
I think in the end, it always, it works out anyways. So
100%.
Okay. And then what is the favorite part about your current job?
But my current job, just so many relationships. If I could, I would just talk to people all day. I have to do a lot of other stuff as well, and send receipts to the right people and that kind of thing. But I'm in a really lovely position where I get to work with all of our staff, some of our contract staff who work on the production of the magazine, some of the, not so much the writers, but I work very closely with our board. That's a number of fantastic volunteers. Any of our special projects. There's just a lot of people involved in putting our magazine together, and running Dance Media Group as well, who are so passionate about the dance sector, so passionate about magazines and literature. Working with people who care about what you do is just the best feeling in the world.
I'm assuming that with the summer coming up, you'll have a lot of, projects coming up, and a lot of dance activities and dance performances that you would be looking forward to, right?
Yeah, well, since COVID, there's been a real upswing in terms of people getting back into theaters. That's been really exciting to see.
And how did you actually manage when the COVID happened and, everything was basically shut down? How did you manage? How was that time for you and your team as well?
Yeah. Well, we, in terms of our actual publication and what we write about, we don't just do reviews. We also cover news. We do features that highlight issues in the sector. So there was a lot to talk about when things were being halted and complications were arising during COVID. We had one feature specifically about the challenge of working parents in dance, specifically mothers, and that challenge got even more difficult during COVID because their childcare disappeared. So our writer was bringing her toddler in to teach dance into the studio with her. Those sorts of issues only became more pronounced during COVID. So there was certainly no dearth of things to discuss, which was great. Well, not great. You know what I'm saying? There were a lot of challenges, but in terms of the conversation, it was plentiful. And then as far as operational challenges for us, it was a very because it was a very tough time for dance organizations who were producing work, it was a tough time for our advertisers. So we saw a real drop in advertising for a while, but things have recovered, which is really great to see. A lot of our advertising clients are dance schools, they're performance presenters. So now that their activity is ticking up again, we're a really great resource for them to reach people who specifically care about dance.
Well, I wish it only gets better for you from now.
Thank you.
So coming to my next question, you have been a performer all your life, from performing for the Golden Fever Follies, practicing contemporary dance and music. Do you still get the time to practice your art?
That's a great question. I currently live in a basement apartment in Toronto. In
Same.
Leslieville. Yeah,
Same.
we all. One downside of communications careers. Would love them to be better paid. No, I love my apartment, love my neighborhood. It's great, but it has very low ceilings. So a lot of people who are fans of dance, they'll tell you, oh, you know what? I did so many online classes during COVID and tried out all of these styles. I have to say, I didn't do a lot of dance in the last couple of years because I couldn't fully extend my arms. I would hit my ceiling.
Touch your ceiling and it just goes right.
Exactly. So that was really hard. But I have to say, a few years ago, I dabbled in salsa, Latin dance, which I had never done before. And it was so much fun. So now that things have opened up again, I'm really looking forward to doing some more of that, because it's a style that I'm not very good at. A colleague of mine here at the Dance Current and I were chatting about that it's so important to go out and try things that you'll just be terrible at for the first little while. I think that's a really important muscle to flex, like practicing being bad at things. And I feel that way a little bit when I walk into a salsa class, because it's just a totally different thing compared to ballet or jazz or contemporary.
Coming to my next question, you've had quite a career graph ever since you started. So what is one advice, you'd give to students looking for internships in a new field?
Specifically looking for internships in a new field.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I touched on this in an earlier answer, but flexibility, I'm going to say that again. Sometimes it's hard to know exactly what an organization needs until you get into the role. So flexibility to adapt to where you can provide the most value is really helpful. Openness to work with new departments. I've said all of this before, but I do think that's a really key thing. And also being open to working with organizations that maybe you haven't pictured yourself working for. Something at the Dancer Transition Resource Center, an organization that I worked at a few years ago, they always accepted interns from the kinesiology department at the University of Toronto, which was really interesting. And you wouldn't think that there would be people in that department who were really interested in arts administration. But because so many of them were interested in kinesiology, a lot of them were coming from dance backgrounds, and it ended up being a really interesting fit. So sometimes you can find your home in really unexpected ways. I mentioned to Carolina, I'm very passionate about advocating for working in the nonprofit sector in general. I think it's a fantastic place to be because people do care about the work that they're engaging in so often. But I don't think a lot of people graduate from programs thinking, oh, I want to work in the nonprofit sector, or I want to work in the social services, or, I think those are fields that, to be frank, they're not as sexy as tech or
agency life and
the agency life. Yeah, that kind of thing. But the thing that you do get in smaller, particularly smaller nonprofit organizations is that ability to try your hand at a whole lot of things. So anyone graduating and hoping for a career in communications, I would say, really take a very broad look at where the needs are for your skill set and be a bit creative with who you offer those up to.
Pick that as well for myself. So coming to my next question, that the majority of our viewers and listeners are students stepping fresh into the communications industry. So how important do you think it is to showcase your transferable skills to recruiters during the hiring process? And how do you identify your own transferable skills and, put it in a better way on your resume or your CV?
Yeah, I love that question so much. I love talking about transferable skills. And that's something that came up a lot, again, while working at the Dancer Transition Resource Center. Gosh, that was 2016 to 18, I was working for them, but it comes up a lot just because of the work that they do. They work specifically with dancers and helping them move into other careers and supporting their career development in sort of those early and medium stages of their career as well. So that's a conversation that's recurring is how do you talk about transferable skills? I think it's the same for dancers and communications professionals. I think it's important to just take a step back and really think about, it's about identifying the very discrete skills that, you may be creating a marketing campaign or you may be planning an event, but what are each of the individual discrete skills that you engage in to do that? I think we're so programmed to focus on outcome and to focus on the big successful end of a project, but all of the steps along the way are equally important. And there are so many people that need some of those small skills that you've
to get the bigger outcome, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And something I've really found in my own life, and I think this is transferable to other people as well, is that I think we're really bad at determining what we excel in, because I think we take our skills for granted so often. This is going to sound ridiculous because I have worked in communications for so long, but for a very long time, I didn't know that I was a good writer. I just kind of assumed that most English speakers were good at writing in English. And it sounds so silly now, but it took a long time to realize that I had a skill set that was very marketable, that not everyone possessed and that not everyone took for granted. I think we spend a lot of time thinking about the things that we're not good at and the things that, how to improve in those things. And that's great. That's wonderful. Absolutely. Like take feedback well and learn how to apply it and, pay attention to those areas where you may have deficits, but equally important is to have a clear view of the things you do really well and to talk about those, because you never know where an organization has a real deficit in some of those skill sets.
And how would you, suggest people to show those skills on your CV? Any particular format or any particular way of writing that, could bring those transferable skills up on your CV?
Yeah, I most recently created a section. I have two sections at the bottom of my CV. One that says skills, and that's an area for me to talk more about some soft skills like, cross-functional coordination, working between departments, project management, some things like that. And then I have technical skills below that to specify things like MailChimp, working with WordPress, some of those things that I know are also quite in demand in a number of organizations. Just carving out space where you can put those in there. Things like project management, especially project management, it's huge. People want to hire people who can see a project through from start to finish, stay on budget, and manage all the people who need to get things done. That's one of those not so sexy things that people might not want to talk about a lot or might not, feel the need to showcase. But I think it's important to say that this is a skill that I have. What else falls into that category?
Organization, right? Organization, time management.
Organization. Totally. Time management. And another one I think is working with stakeholders, and not necessarily customer service, but anything where you're doing external relations. That's hard stuff. Again, easy to take for granted that you can represent your organization well to the public. There's lots of those very small things that I think people need to go through what they do in the course of a day and think, can I do this in other industries and other companies that are not my own? And if the answer is yes, that's a transferable skill, and just carve a space out for it.
Any piece of advice for students who are graduating in communications field and skills that they should be equipped with?
Skills that they should be equipped with. I already said how much I think project management is important, but I'll say it again. And the key thing about project management is not just organization for yourself. I think anyone who goes through a rigorous academic program is great at managing themselves and great at managing their own work. The trick is how well can you collaborate with others and help structure a larger work process that involves multiple people and multiple stakeholders, sometimes multiple departments. That's again one of those things that a lot of people are great at, but don't think of it as a really discrete set of skills. Sometimes it may fall into a different category. People who are skilled in things like photography or videography or design, get that in there. Start talking about that. Talk about it all the time. I'm getting tongue-tied here, but put that front and center when you're applying for more, maybe, I don't know, more corporate communications roles. That's important. People doing the hiring may not even think to ask for those skill sets, but if you say, hey, this is something that I can bring to the table, I can save you hiring a videographer because this is the skill set that I also have. Talk about those more creative skills as well, even if they don't come up in job applications and job posts. I think there are a lot of things like that where if you can say, hey, this is an added value that I bring, it makes it easier to create communications campaigns because I can provide you with the visual collateral as well. That's really great. And I think there's a number of digital applications that are really important to work with as well. I don't want to name any specifically because they change so often, but the last hiring process I went through, I realized, oh my gosh, this, what is it? HubSpot. That's something that I do not know how to use HubSpot, but I saw it on so many applications.
It's coming up, yeah. Hootsuite,
exactly.
HubSpot, all these things, new tech things are coming up. So it's very important to keep up with it.
Yeah, exactly. That's on the far end of intense CRM, customer relationship management stuff. But, if you can offer up a good suite of, Hootsuite and social media planning applications and those that...
like Canva these days.
And Canva, right? Yeah. It seems, and that's another one of those things that at first look, you may think, oh, anyone can they're so easy to use. Anyone can log in and do that. But I think that's a generational blind spot for us too. It's so easy for us to adopt some of these new platforms that we forget that some smaller teams that may have older staff members, they just don't even want to go near it.
They get scared. They're like, no, what is happening, right?
Exactly. So saying, I can use Canva to do some basic design work. I can use Hootsuite to program our social media campaigns. I can use MailChimp to manage our social media campaigns and analytics. Google Analytics is a big one. Those sorts of things. There's free tutorials for all of this stuff. Yeah, just being able, again, that's why I added that little technology, what did I call it? Should have printed it. Yeah, just sort of technology skills, whatever. Just having a line there that you can just throw in whatever seems applicable to the role that you have some experience with. That goes a long way. And also, just a small note to add, because I know I'm talking a lot. Excellent. I also think don't discount how much experience you need to say that you've used this stuff. Because even managing one campaign in MailChimp, you know how to use it, there's some of these tools where you don't need to spend a whole lot of time. You don't need to have years of experience using this stuff. You can just say, I'm familiar with it. I can do a basic campaign and I'll learn what else I need to know. If you've used it at all, if you've used it in the context of your work to any degree, I would say call that something that you know how to use.
And I think, these applications, they are changing so much that you'll never be able to fully learn them. There's always going to be something that you'll learn when you're in the process of doing a project.
Exactly. That's so true. Someone who, has used a platform for 5 years could wake up tomorrow and there's a new version and they have to relearn something else again.
Exactly, right? It's changing every day. Yeah. So thank you so much, Kallee. That is it for today. And thank you so much for your time and your advice. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners? Anything that you'd like to add?
No, I think just thank you, Aishwarya and Carolina as well for hosting this. I do think, it makes all the difference just getting people in the same industry together to talk about the ins and outs of what they do and some of those more esoteric pieces of the field. So this has been a lot of fun. Thanks.
Thank you, Kallee, for your guidance. And Aishwarya, you did an excellent job. Congratulations. Are there any social media handles that you, Kallee and Aishwarya, would like to share? Where can we find you?
Yes. So you can find, I have to look at my notes. This is not very communications professional of me, but on Twitter, I am at Kallee Lins, just first and last name. On Instagram at KT_Lins, and I'm at Kallee Lins on LinkedIn as well. If anyone wants to chat further, reach out. I'm always happy to talk to like-minded and especially emerging professionals as well.
Thank you. And what about you, Aishwarya?
For me, my Instagram blog is Travel Pilgrimage. And for my LinkedIn, it's my first name and my last name, Aishwarya Sen, S-E-N.
Okay, well, thank you everyone, and see you on the next Professionals and Coffee Chat. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and social media platforms, which are in the description below this video. And please join us to do your own virtual coffee chat, just like Aishwarya did today. Thank you, and bye-bye.